faith, hope, and courage. Welcome to Liberty X Happy Hour. Whoa. Welcome to Liberty X Happy
Okay, well, let's get going because I'm a military woman. I like to start on time, but we are so pleased and proud to welcome back. And she actually is a warrior for children, and she's been on the show before. Elena Barbera. She's known as the Based Mother. You can find her little videos on Instagram, on X. She's done stuff on TikTok, on YouTube. She's a leading advocate for parental rights and anti-grooming. She's a Christian mom, author, documentary filmmaker, and she's got her amazing documentary that she made, American Groomers, and it showcases what parents don't know, that porn is in our children's libraries and books that are still in schools. And she is just such a warrior. So, Elena, welcome back to Liberty X today.
Thanks. I'm psyched to be here.
Tell us, more about you. And you've just been the last few months. You and I have really got to know each other. You have been doing all kinds of media hits around the country, spreading the word about that groomers exist and exists. So tell us more about you and what you've been up to. And we'll get into CPAC today as well.
Cool. So, what I've been up to with regard to the kids and the porn in the schools is, I put out my documentary because I was watching, I became an accidental YouTuber, and that's how I got in the video online space at all. I didn't even know how to use Instagram before 2.5 years ago. And so I was just your average American who was going about her life, slowly. Once Trump went down the escalator, I started paying closer and closer attention and realizing that, I didn't really trust the mainstream media because I would see it started with him where I would watch him do something. I would watch an entire speech, an entire online event with him, and then I would see the mainstream media report on it in a way that it was entirely disingenuous. And it woke me up. And I started paying attention to my government and mistrusting everything that was coming at me. And when I saw that the mainstream media was talking about these crazy right-wing fascist Nazi lunatics who were banning books, I was like, wow, I am absolutely for the First Amendment. I certainly don't like the idea of banning books. What is this? But I didn't trust them. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to read these books myself and see what is in them. And what I learned when I bought these books and read them cover to cover is that there is absolute filth being pushed on our kids. And when I say that, some people will say, "Oh, kids need sex ed. You're just a prude." And I'm like, kids don't need to know that the website kink.com is a real thing. Kids don't need to be shown explained that sex shops and sex toys are a thing. They don't need to understand orgies and threesomes and S&M, and they don't need full page instructions on anal masturbation in order to get through life. And these are the things that I found. So I started talking to people, and then I hear them say things like, "Oh, that's not happening. Those aren't real." And I'm like, I can show you it's real. And then they'll say, "Oh, it may be happening, but it's happening in like those crazy blue states." And I realized I had to do something. So you mentioned I'm a Christian. I prayed about it. What do I do? And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. You have to make a documentary. And I started researching. And the things I learned made my blood boil. For example, in all states, it's illegal to give pornography to children because there are what are called harmful to minors statutes. So that's why, you can't go to a newsstand. I just dated myself by even saying the word newsstand. I know, but you can't go to a newsstand and sell a Hustler magazine to a little kid. But if you go into a school or a library and you show that Hustler magazine to a kid, you can say it was for educational purposes and be exempted from any criminal prosecution. So you're just off the hook. And these statutes open the door for predators to come in and teach children all of this crazy stuff I'm talking about. So it started slow, like in the in school libraries, books on the shelf, and the American Library Association is making these choices and putting them in, and teachers unions are behind them. And then they made it into classroom libraries, and then they made it onto summer reading lists, and now they're on other teachers choice reading assignments. And the curriculum itself is far beyond what any child needs to know or human beings need to know in order to continue existing, which we have for thousands of years without teaching kids about things like fisting. Um, but this is what's in these books. And so I made the film. I went up and down the coast interviewing people. I learned more and more. And there are people who have been screaming about this into the void for decades, and no one's been listening. And I'm like, no, 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 we're going to get everybody to listen. And for the first time since I entered this fray with Donald Trump in the White House, people are actually starting to listen because they're really starting to look closely at what's going on in the schools.
Well, I love that. A couple, like 2 years ago, is when I first interviewed Moms for Liberty, and they brought in, I think it was Gender Queer. And they're like, we were on a commercial break, and they're like, Veronica, this is one of the books we're talking about. Elena, looked at 4 pages. I screamed. Because I was like, literally, it was X-rated. I was in shock. I only looked at 4 pages. They offered it to me again, and I was ready to burn the book. I could not believe that a book like that was in any school outlet. How do you deal with the shock? I'm literally, those 4 pages are still like burned into my brain, and I'm so disgusted. I've raised 2 children, Christian. They've done the right thing in life, and I just cannot believe. Like I would have probably burned the school down, if I'd seen those books when they were in school. So how do you deal with that? I mean, it was just so, literally took my breath away. I couldn't believe it.
All right. Well, two things. So first of all, I say, I'm from Brooklyn, right? And I grew up in the 70s, 80s. And I'll tell you this, if any teacher showed this stuff to a kid back then, let's call him Mr. Appletree, he would have just disappeared. And, everybody would have just, what happened to Mr. Appletree? Oh, he had to move to the country to take care of his sick aunt. And that would have been the end of it because, nobody was putting up with this. People used to protect children from this kind of thing. And I don't suggest that we make the Mr. Appletrees just disappear like they did in the in the old days, because I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want anybody that's in this fight to to do anything unchristian. But we have to find a legal path to get these people out of the schools and get back on track and protecting our children. As for how I deal with it, I don't know. God just gave me a strong constitution to be able to face tough things and say tough things. And I do readings. And I don't know if you've seen me doing some of these readings from these books. And they are, most people say to me what you said, like, I couldn't do that. And you kind of get used to it, which is a little weird. When I first was doing my filming, the very first interview I did was up in Boston. I interviewed my pastor up there and his wife to talk about homeschooling, and I showed them the books. And it was the first interview I had ever done. Like, I had no business doing this, right? But I did it anyway. And so I do this interview, and I say to them after, "All right, guys, I was nervous. How'd I do?" And they were like, "You did great. Good questions. It was a good conversation." He said, "But your voice cracked. Like he goes, you got a little nervous. I could tell when you were showing us that stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, it's really difficult." And then the very next day, we drove to New York, me and my cameraman, and I walked around Times Square showing these book pages to strangers on the street. And by the end of that day, I was just walking up to anybody being like, "Hey, do you want to talk about anal masturbation instruction for middle schoolers?" Like it was normal. And I realized that in one day, I had been groomed to think it was normal or to feel normal about having these conversations. And if as an adult, I can be impressionable like that, what are we doing to kids? It is so dangerous. And what people don't realize is that when you're talking about sexual activity at that level with children, they think it's normal. They start to think that this is what you should talk about with adults. So then when that creepy coach or the creepy uncle comes in, they're like, these kids are primed and ready to be physically sexually abused because they've been taught that this is okay for them to be engaged in. And then when the weirdo online starts talking to the kid and says, "Send me pictures of yourself." They're in the books. There are instructions in one book called Let's Talk About It, where it shows kids how to take pictures of yourself and make sure to cover up any identifying marks because you might get in trouble for sending these.
So
So,
appalling. Oh my gosh. So I mean,
yeah.
I'm literally still scarred from the 4 pages, Elena. You are such a warrior. So I know here in Florida, the governor DeSantis has fought the fight, through Moms for Liberty, and I know your hard work getting out there. And a lot of these books were in the libraries of the teachers, and now here in Florida, that was their way to sneak them in. Every school, the governor mandated that every school in Florida that there's a media person, and every library, teacher's library, and the library books have to be reviewed. But I know those books still exist because people have reached out to me over the last couple of years to let me know that it's still happening. So are you seeing that other states are stepping up as well? Because you said 39 states, it's legal to show this stuff. That's just shocking to me. As a parent, how is this okay? Is it everybody just doesn't care? It's going to take an Elena in every state to fight the fight?
All right. So first of all, don't get a false sense of security about Florida or any red state for that matter, or any place where it's not legal, because these things are still in place. The American Library Association, the teachers unions, the Human Rights Campaign, Planned Parenthood, and SECUS, which is like the sex ed council, they all have materials in schools in all 50 states. And these books are still in the states. So in Florida, the law is about curriculum. So they can't put this stuff in the curriculum, but the state is still flooded with these books in school libraries, school classrooms, and they're still making their way into children's hands. And the only way to do it is on the local level. So what I mean by that, in the 80s, there was a Supreme Court case called Island Trees School District versus Pico. And in that case, this school district in California, the board had removed a whole bunch of books they didn't like. And it was like religious stuff, political stuff, ideological things they didn't like. And it made its way, they got sued, and it made its way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said a school board does not have the right to remove any books that they don't like, except if they're obscene, if they're pervasively vulgar, then a school board can make the decision to remove that stuff from every school district building in the district. So the only way, so like President Trump can't come in and make a fell swoop. He can make an executive order and put financial pressure and say, we're going to remove federal funding if you don't get these books out of your schools. But at the end of the day, it requires parents to go and investigate the schools, find the books, and then do a legal challenge to each book and have the school board remove them. Now, if you stand up, and I could read stuff to you right now that, I don't know how far you want to go on this space, but the God, this is just so crazy. I'm thinking about what will I read if you let
No,
me.
no, no. Don't read it, Elena, because we know what's in the books. We know.
No, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. But I'll post a video after this, a compilation of me reading stuff that
I
will
did
make people's heads
I
spin.
did share a short video of you, Elena, and the nest. If anybody wants to see specifically what she's talking about, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's only some of it. And so you have to look at your school board, put their feet to the fire, and say, "You explain to me why any child, even a high schooler, needs to see this," and let them explain it. But it's such a strange mentality that's taken over the nation. I was in the airport today in Charlotte, and I sit down next to this girl, and she's probably 21 or so, and she starts just chatting with me about my boots, right? And I'm like, great, now there's an opening, and then I see she takes a book out, and it's this book called A Court of Mist and Fury by this author, Sarah Moss. Now, this woman's books are in like all states, all schools, like everywhere we have looked, we have found these books. And it is just hardcore erotica. It is for adults. There is no question about it. And I said to her, "Oh, hey, can I ask you about that book?" And we start talking, and she goes, "Well, I'm like, these are in schools." And she's like, "Well, we think it's fine in high school." And I'm talking about like stuff that used to be like just, the letters to Playboy or Hustler or that, like very serious erotica. And she goes, "Well, I think it's fine." I go, "Well, I don't know, these are in middle schools." And she goes, "Well, that's a little young, but yeah, like high school, it's fine." I go, "Really? You think a 13-year-old should be seeing this?" And she goes, looks at me and she goes, "I was 15 when I started having sex and I'm fine." And I was like, well, that remains to be seen, because I really didn't want to explain to her how much mental and emotional damage and physical damage she's doing to herself by being promiscuous, because she just seemed, I could tell she just had an attitude that, just sleep with everybody, sleep with everything. And we see that the long-term emotional, social, physical damage that does to young people when they engage too early. And I just said, "Okay." And I just was like, I just smiled and I was like, "All right." And I'm not going to like get into a fight in the airport with a 21-year-old girl who looked at me like, I was the crazy one. And actually sat there and prayed for her because I got
That's
upset.
lovely. I mean, so tell us, I mean, because the American Groomer, the video has been out for a little while now, and you're trying to market this across the country. I know you've been working really hard at this the last few months. What is the reception when you finally get this video in front of people? I know when I watched it, it is shocking, and so many people just they don't realize this is out there. So that's my question. And then do you have some legislators that you've been able to team up with to help you in this fight, Elena?
So right now, not yet. I'm getting there though, actually. So CPAC was very productive, and I went there with the singular goal of getting this to the White House. So what the film does, it's 36 minutes. I made it free because it's far too important to put behind a paywall. Everyone needs to see it and get a grip on how the government has put this into play while we were all not paying attention, and living our lives. So that's my main mission is awareness. And I want to now get this to the White House because I want to stand in the Oval Office and show this disgusting stuff to Donald Trump, because his head will explode and I know he will do something about it, if even it is only to activate parents and let them know the truth. But there's something interesting you as a veteran will find interesting, that all of this stuff is also in the DoD schools. So most people, if they're not in the military, they don't realize that the Department of Defense operates its own schools on bases here in the US and in bases overseas. And all of these books are also in those schools.
Well,
And I don't even think
I will
Hegseth knows
say,
that.
Elena, on that note, having lived overseas, I spent 7 years in Japan, two different assignments, and in Germany, all the teachers are freaking liberal. They're so liberal. So I can see that actually with your statement. I know Ded had a comment. Go ahead, Ded.
The most beautiful, well, there's nothing beautiful about this, but there is. Now parents can actually go to the meetings. And now that we have Trump, we have Kash Patel, now we don't have to worry about, well, we shouldn't. We shouldn't have to, well, the parents shouldn't have to worry about being, their homes raided or labeled as white supremacists and all this other type of crap. Like now the parents should feel safe to be able to go to these meetings and actually call this crap out and not have to worry about the ramifications.
That's a really great point. And what we're trying to, so now I've taken, I collaborate very closely with this organization now that I'm so excited to talk about this. Takebacktheclassroom.com. What they do is two-part. One, they investigate every district in the country, get the list of the books, and then they post the books on their website. so that you can look in your state, in your district, and see what's going on. And then they train people on how to challenge these books in a way that will get it done. Because if you go into the school board meeting and you start saying, "Well, I don't like genderqueer. I don't want my kid being, there's dirty stuff in here, and I don't want my kid being taught about transgenderism and all that," that's it. You're gonna get wrapped up and kicked out, because now you're fighting about an ideology, and you legally cannot remove a book about transgenderism. If you just focus on the obscenity, on the pervasive vulgarity, you will be able to get the book removed with enough pressure. And so this organization is training people, and their website right now, I recommend you go and sign up for their emails, because in a few weeks, the website is being relaunched, and every single district in the country is going to be listed. So they are right now, for the past 2 years, they've been doing this manually, where it's very difficult to find out what the list of books is in a school district's library. They bury it so deep in the internet, it's hard to find. Some of them actually refuse to share it, and you have to file a FOIA request in order to get the information, which is sickening, because we're all taxpayers and we should know what's going on in our schools. And they've been doing this, but now they have a way to do it faster, and every school in America is going to be up in 3 weeks. So if you get on their email list, you'll get notified when this is up, and you're going to be able to go and look at the very school that's across the street from your house and see what's going on in there. And then and that's going to be how we activate people when they actually see the truth, because they just still don't believe that the teachers they trust would do this to their kids. And I'm just trying to go around the country and hit people over the head with this frying pan of truth, and say, stop trusting these people. They are not on your side. And if nothing gets you to pay attention to what's going on in the schools with regard to the sexual grooming, I mean, aren't you paying attention to the fact that the kids can't read and write, and they're graduating high school without being able to sign their own name? Some of these kids, it's only 40% of American school children can read at grade level. What is that? What are we doing?
Oh, that's amazing. I see, Justin, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I just thought it was a good point that to focus on the vulgarity, not the ideology. That's the same thing I thought I have as a gay conservative is one, I can use that to my advantage in a school board meeting, because it looks like even my school board here in a very, very red state has some issues in this county. But just to apply the same standard, just be like, hey, I'm applying the same standard. This would be vulgar, whether it's gay or straight. It's vulgar for that age, especially, and to use that approach. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so on this website, Take Back the Classroom, next to every book, there's going to be a form that was written with the law in mind, that very specifically explains why the book needs to be removed. And all you have to fill in is your name, the title of the book, the date, and then you can submit it. So it's not like you have to invent the wheel. Because, like, excuse me, I forget who said it a few moments ago about parents being, finally not being afraid. They still have to overcome the, like, "Oh, yeah, but how do I do this part?" And this is what we're doing. We're giving people the tools, and that's what I'm going to be out here talking about constantly. I want everybody to look at this website and have a complete bug out, and then do something about it. So yeah, it's going to be very easy for you. We're doing all the setup is going to be in your hands.
That's so good,
Uh,
Elena, because so often parents, they're busy, they don't have time. Sounds like this website's going to deliver everything. Tom, go ahead. You had a question, and then we'll go through the audience here.
Yeah, Lena, how are you? It's weird talking between the host account, Liberty X, and this account. So I thought I'd just talk from this one. So hopefully you could hear me okay. But it
Oh
was
yeah.
really nice to meet you at CPAC and talk with Miss England, you guys have been working super hard on this website. So I don't know how go live it is, but I remember when we talked and you were showing me, it was super easy on the website just to click your state, and then you could find the list of all of the schools in your district, right? So you pick your state, then your district, and it tells you if the books are there and just gives you the form letter. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So
Okay.
right now, the quote unquote the current website is going to be updated in just a couple of weeks with every single school in the country.
Okay. And
So
that's
right
the
now,
take back the classroom, which is the one that I just shared the nest. So anybody that's listening who is a parent like me, I have 4 kids. One still in middle school, one still in high school, and I have a note to check in 2 weeks to go and see what books are in the high school and what books are in the middle school. And I'm going to be the first one to download the form letters and the book copies that you saw. So just want to know, just making sure that takebacktheclassroom.com, that's going to be the live website in just 2 weeks, right?
yes, and there's still plenty to get you fired up right now on that website, but it's going to be complete. So at the bottom, there's a place where you can pop in your email. They don't sell, they don't share, and that way you can start getting their emails, and you'll know, and you'll get a reminder when it's like full blown
Full
live.
blown live. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one that I saw when we were on the CPAC floor, which, guys, it was super, super easy to use. From what I saw anyway. And so I think you were just showing me sort of the test site, the one that's going live, right?
Yes, I can't share that link yet. That it's
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, that it's absolutely brilliant what they've come up with.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it like easy. You don't even have to think about it. Take action, and then you go there and download the forms, fill it in, and you're done. So
Yeah.
Well, this is
it's just
great, making it very easy for parents, and let's go after these people. Jem, go ahead. You're next.
Oh, hey, thanks, Veronica. And thanks, Elena, for all the amazing work that you do. I was just curious, it's been a while since, I've had to think about schools and all that, but listening to your story, the books are obviously a problem, but I've even seen between like Libs of TikTok and like Tucker Carlson and all this, how the teachers seem to also use language and word usage, and it would almost seem that that's a precursor to how the books fit in. And I was just wondering if you could talk about how dangerous some of the language is. And I mean, just some of the stuff that pops into my mind as like particularly troubling would be the use of like words like, for example, minor attracted person. Like when I heard that, I was just like, how is a teacher even able to talk to a kid like that? Because it seems like those are the words that begin the normalization process of these really screwed up concepts like pedophilia and grooming kids. And I was just wondering if you could just comment on how do you handle that? Because, I get policing books, but if teachers are using language like that before a kid even gets to read a book, is that something that you've experienced or had to deal with? I would just love to hear your comments on language usage.
Oh yeah, the language. It really does make me crazy when I hear people talking about minor attracted persons. So the first thing that comes to my mind is the decades of science we have that about what happens to children when they're groomed. So there's two different kinds of sexual abuse. There's non-contact sexual abuse, which is what these books are doing. Non-contact sexual abuse is showing a child pornography, talking to a kid about sexual acts, forcing them into conversations that their brains are physically not developed enough to handle. And then what that does is it sets them up for contact sexual abuse, as I mentioned before. They're primed and ready to go for a predator. At that point, they end up sexually abusing each other. They end up being sexually abused by strangers, by people they know, and so on. Because when we think of sex trafficking, we think of kids being scooped up in a van and taken away. That's a very small part of sex trafficking. A lot of it is done on the local level by people they know and trust. So when you start telling children that they should have empathy for somebody who wants to have sexual contact with them, then the child even if somebody's coming at them as a predator, even if all their instincts are going off, they've been trained to think, I'm a bigot, I'm a bad person if I say no. So it is extremely dangerous. And this, and we have celebrities saying things like, oh, I can't bear the thought of a 12-year-old not being able to get an abortion if she needs one. And I'm like, how about you maybe you shouldn't be able to bear the thought that people are having sex with 12-year-olds. Like that's really why don't we solve that instead of crying about, like, you want 12-year-olds to be able to have an abortion, which is also a trauma. So minor attracted persons is one of those things that I just will fight and rail against. And I absolutely refuse to accept the fact that somebody who wants to or has ever sexually touched a child, is going to get any grace in this world. Jesus can handle them. Let them take it up with him. But here, it needs to remain a crime, and it needs to remain a stigmatized, disgusting behavior at whatever we do. We also, talk. There was another initiative that I'm just starting to dig in myself, where the MIT Media Lab was promoting the use of child-sized sex robots for pedophiles, so that the pedophiles can have sex with these child robots and kind of get it out of their system. Um, we all know what that leads to. That will never. That's just sick and barbaric, and then it'll never be enough. All it will do is fuel their fire for ultimately wanting the real thing. So there is a constant normalization. You've got Congress trying to pass bills, or at least during in the past few years, trying to pass bills to mandate sex education starting in kindergarten around the country. There's a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to normalize pedophilia. So my take is just tell them to pound it. We're not having it. Get away from our children. We're not going to just sit back and worry and take it anymore. It is that simple.
That's great. All right, Dad, go ahead, and then Pixel, you're next after Dad.
What's the number one? How can we help you? Like, what's the best way for us, for everyone listening and people that want to get involved? What's the best way for us to help you?
So the first step I say is, to make people aware, which is why I made the film. So I ask everybody to watch it or invite a few friends, a few parents over. No kids. Do not have kids in the room. Watch the film. You'll get an understanding, and then go to Take Back the Classroom and see what's going on in your own district. And then you just need a few strong parents willing to fight the fight in every district and go up against the school board. That's the starting point. And you have to talk to the principal and your teachers and say, just so you know, I'm going after the school board, and you're going down with them if you're not on board with getting this stuff out of here. Just want to let you know right now. As far as legislators go, there are certain states like Montana where they have kicked the American Library Association out of their libraries because they saw what they were doing to kids. And you can talk to your legislators about stopping any funding and affiliation with these organizations. It's a big project. But my first step is start with the school board. If you have somebody that really has a fire for it, let them run for school board, start flipping the seats, expose these people. So and so on the school board thinks it's okay for your child to read American Psycho. And Veronica said I'm not allowed to read it, so I'm going to behave myself. But if I read you the excerpt from this book, there is no child that should ever hear it. And somebody put in the comments here, Neil, I want to address your comment. You said you want to ban them from elementary and middle schools. I'm fine with that. High school is a bit complicated. I was 18 in my senior year, and you have no right to tell me as an adult what to read. And to that, I say, yes, taxpayers do have a right to protect all children in the schools. Now, if you're 18 and you want to purchase this book or go to a library, an adult section of a library somewhere else, have at it. I'm not banning books to say they can't be purchased anywhere. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them at the bookstore. No one's going to stop you. And if a parent wants to buy a book and show this to their child at home, I don't agree with that, but what can I do? But it is absolutely should not be taxpayer funded. And there shouldn't be an adult section in a high school. It's just kind of absurd to posture that, in my opinion,
So true.
respectfully.
So true. Pixel, go ahead.
Thank you, Veronica. I, I just wanted to say thank you to Elena. This subject really touches home for me because I experienced some trauma when I was young, and I don't think people know unless they've experienced it that people aren't propagating this behavior unless they themselves have been damaged. And I just wanted to ask Elena if the website you were saying that sounds like it would be a very powerful resource to have. Did you say the web address is not available to give out yet, or no?
Oh, no, it is. So you can go to takebacktheclassroom.com right now, and there are a couple dozen states that are listed so far. But the full country is going to be up in 2 weeks. So go there, get comfortable with the site now, and just start bopping around, and you can read excerpts from some of these books now.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Yeah,
And Pixel,
yeah. And
Yes, sir.
it's also in the nest if you want to click
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want to do the guy that does their life story, but yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, because this is very personal to me.
thank you. And I'm
Thanks.
sorry. It's a lot of us have had bad experiences, even as adults, and it's traumatizing, so that's kind of why I'm like, I've seen what's gone on to friends, and how being sexually assaulted has affected and destroyed lives as adults, never mind what this does to a kid. And that's why I get so fired up and mad about it. And I have a second I just one thing I want to say before the next question is, another thing that people can do, if you belong to any organization, a parent organization, a church that's willing to address this, a political group, and you want to do a viewing party, I come to viewing parties and I have these conversations with people. And I always try to bring like local information that's custom to where you are. So I can do that by Zoom, or, I'm just now starting to book things where I have a couple places that already this year coming up that I'm flying in to do live conversations with people. So if you want to, you can, on my website where my film is, americangroomerfilm.com, or here on X, you can reach me, and I will come and help you tell this story.
Great. Neil, go ahead, and then Justin, and then we're gonna let Tom take it for a minute here.
Okay, hello. So what I was going to ask is, specifically when it comes to these books, how explicit were you talking? Like, does it have to be hardcore, like pornography, or like how explicit were you guys talking?
I'm gonna post a video on my. Oh, well, can I post a video, Tom, in the
Yes.
comments?
There's already one in the purple pill. Um, it's also up in the nest. If you scroll over, it's your latest one.
Well, I mean, what's the problem, Neil? These things are X-rated and disgusting. So, and Elena
Well,
is
no,
definitely
but
an advocate on that. So, why would
that, that,
anybody want children seeing this
that,
crap?
No, but I think he
that's
needs to
not what
he needs to hear it, because that's just the thing. People
that,
think that like it's just that like I'm just being a prude. And I'm like, oh no, that's why I have to read it, Veronica. That's why people need to see it, because it's.
Hey, Neil. Some parents have gone to these meetings, excuse me, and they've read what their children are being read, and the board gets offended by what the parents are reading, and they say we don't want to hear this type of crap. And then the parents go, well, if you don't want to hear it, what makes you think our children should be hearing it? There's tons of videos out there just like that where the parents are literally reading word for word exactly what the children are being heard, but yet the board members, they get all offended by it. So it's like if adults can't take it, what makes anyone, and I'm not saying this, as to be an ass or anything like to you, but if the adults don't want to hear it, then why the hell should children have to hear it? And there's tons of videos out there like that, man.
Yeah, I just posted it under Tom's post about I hope it's the right space where I put it. If not, Tom, if you could share it where everyone can see it. I just posted a comment with a video,
Absolutely.
and you can watch it after. That's a 4-minute compilation of some of my quote unquote favorite excerpts, and it's not even the worst, believe it or not. And you'll understand how severe the problem is. It's not like I'm just like, I don't want them talking about sex at all, or I don't want kids to know about condoms. It's like, like that's
Right.
that's like child's play at this point. Yeah.
And one thing I want to point out too, if you check out Elena anywhere where you podcast, so if it's Apple Podcasts, iHeart, she's on every one of those platforms. She begins her podcast with readings directly from the book. So if you need to get a sense of uh, exactly what we're talking about here, just listen to her podcast at the beginning or the video that's shared up in the nest, and that'll give you a better idea, Neil.
Well, and my apologies, Neil. I just am so frustrated because these books are so disgusting. And to think that we even have to step up and fight this in school systems, who's fighting for the children? And that's what Elena's doing. And all of these organizations, the new website that you're going to launch, Moms for Liberty, people are fighting the fight because we've got all these liberal losers in there that are happy for these children to see this. So, Justin, last question, and then I'm throwing it to Patrick.
Statement before the question. You'll probably get an invite. I'm definitely going to mention you because our Republican County Board is definitely looking for speakers, and with the problems we're having with our school board here, yeah, I think you would be an excellent candidate. My question is sort of a local versus state issue. I think one of the issues, and you can tell me if this was just rhetoric or not, in in Florida, is that they had librarian had to go through all these books, and of course in West Virginia, I mean, we may have in some of these rural districts, we may have one librarian for the whole county, for the school districts. So I'm not trying to burden some poor, moderate librarian here, but uh, is there an idea to have a state board, or do you think it's not a state law issue that can be handled? It just has to be done on the local level. Thanks.
That's a great question. My understanding is that it has to be done on the local level. So the state board can can mandate what's in curriculum, but the libraries are a district uh, issue, and the books in the classroom libraries, quote unquote, off curriculum, are a district issue, and that is based on the Supreme Court case Island Tree School District versus Pico from the 80s that I mentioned, which makes it really, really a heavy lift. But I believe that with all the attention that the president is shining on what's going on in schools with the critical race theory and the DEI indoctrination and the gender indoctrination, this is right behind it. And this is just on the periphery of the spotlight, and I'm just over here trying to shove it into the spotlight with all of that. Yeah, and I think we're going to get there, and I think people are going to freak out when they see what's really in these books, when the truth is there.
Like I have done. So my
Yeah.
apologies. It's literally scandalous. I guess because my mother was raised by nuns practically, and so when you read this stuff, you're like, oh, how did we go from one extreme to the other? All right, Tom, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica, and thanks for all the work and giving all of the listeners here, Elena, some action plans. I invited just Patrick because I hear them on the Punch Bowl every single morning doing the president, the Pledge of Allegiance, with the exception of today, I think, right, just Patrick, and they do a lot of work in this space. So I thought there'd be some more calls to action, and so I wanted to bring just Patrick up as a speaker. And thank you, Just Patrick, for just coming. or for just coming for coming to our space tonight. I was hoping, like, for those in the audience that may not know you, if you would mind sharing a little bit about your story and your background, and kick it off with that question. I got a couple of other questions for you.
Well, thank you, Tom, Veronica, Dad, uh, especially Base Mother. All the work that you're doing is just amazing to hear all of that. And my information is a segue into yours in a sense, and I'll get into that. Now, I spent most of my life as transgender, a right leaning. So I believe I voted for President Trump and everything else, but I was transgender for almost 30 years of my 56 years. So I spent a lot of time in that community. I know the ins and outs of it, and I come from a lot of trauma. So a lot of trauma was inflicted upon me, and which led me to believe that I was not uh, a man. So I, to escape manhood, I dove into being transgender, thinking that the feminine side of me would be a lot more appealing and a lot more based for me. But thankfully, May of last year, I gave my life to God in the middle of a pasture. Oh, wow. Such an amazing, beautiful experience. I could not imagine my life before that moment because it was such an amazing thing. And for the last couple of years, I've been, doing a lot of writing and everything about protecting children from the harms of transgender ideology, a lot like Based has, but another aspect of what she does, and how the grooming starts in school and how the children are the language that are being used, like someone else mentioned, how these teachers and these staff are pushing the transgender ideology on these kids, grooming them down this path. When you have teachers that have the trans flag, the BLM flag, this flag, that flag, and to call them by their preferred pronouns that aren't even matching their biological reality, and it's horrible. I just wrote an article about the ethics of how the medical and mental health establishments are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Um, so I talk about what the things that they're doing and how it's harmful to children, because we need to challenge these establishments, both medical and mental. And we also need to challenge these school boards, our state legislatures, and our own government to prove the harms that is happening to these children. I just finished a 1,800 word piece of research where it goes through all the list of harms of all these drugs that they're giving kids. That's not including the surgeries. The surgeries look like a butcher job and all of that. So there's so much information there that is just uh, horrific. And the reason why I fight this is because I don't want children to go down the path that I have. I've been down it. I spent 55 years, 6 months, and 6 days on that path, and it is not a good path. Nothing I did was fixing me. And until I gave my life to God. So God deserves the glory for that, for saving me, pulling me out of it because I couldn't do it myself. So that is my
I
life.
just love that. Patrick, I just love that. And I know that on some of the spaces that I've heard you on and seen you in Punchbowl, you talk about your mental health background and you're a certified mental health professional. And you're doing a lot of work like Elena is to help support these kids. And I just wanted to kind of give you the platform. I know you write for the Gays for Groomers. You do a lot of work with them as well. Maybe you can talk about some other ways that folks can follow you and come into some of your spaces that you're having so that they can learn other ways that we can sort of fight back against this from a mental health perspective, right? Elena's doing it for the schools, right? You're doing it from mental health and directly helping kids. So I was hoping you can just speak about that a little bit.
Well, a lot of the information I put out is well researched. It comes from 30 years of lived experience. I went back to school, got my degree, and spent more time getting my mental health certification and training outside of school. And it's taken me, 2.5 years to get it all. And So, but I also have a lot of that lived experience in that. So it really kind of helps formulate and form my thoughts into how I can actually help. And so I put out a lot of technical information as well as, heartfelt advocacy for the protection of children. I write a lot. That is my gift. I'm able to write about these topics with the knowledge of experience and training that most people will never get because they don't understand it because they've never been on it from the inside out. I'm the inside out. I'm the one that can see this. I am one of probably 50 detransitioners. I'm one of the oldest verified ones that I can find. There's possibly two more who are older than me who detransitioned also, but their information is kind of scarce and anecdotal. But yeah, so there's a lot to it. There's it, this is an emotional thing for me. This is truly is emotional because the harm that it causes, I want people to have that information because if people can understand the harm that they're causing, hopefully I can help them down a different path. I will never affirm someone's gender. I will never not affirm someone's gender either because, I don't want kind of that balanced view. It's really a fine line between the two to be able to help someone to to the point to where they're making decisions for themselves, not me making them for them. And we need more like that because I'm really skeptical of the medical and mental health establishments because of the information they put out is this gender affirming care model, which I feel is absolutely erroneous because we're seeing more and more cases uh, and rises in this gender ideology. So it's really kind of difficult to combat when you're going against the APA, both of them, because there's two of them. You got the American Psychology Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and you have the AMA, which is the medical side of it. So it's really, really, you're fighting these huge, these huge establishments on top of the pharmaceutical companies, so that are backing a lot of this stuff. And I can only help to keep putting out the truth, and that way people can look at the truth for themselves and make their own judgment and to use that information in the best way they possibly can. I only put it out as the truth.
Well, that's awesome. So, just Patrick, people can find out about more about what you write by following you, and they can also go to the Gays for Groomers site as well. But it looks like Elena has a quick question for you, and then I think Veronica also has a question.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate you talking about the mental health aspect of this. I got into it in my film a little bit. When I say there's decades of research of the mental, atrocities that come with sexually grooming children. I just want to say that I touch on it in my film to try to let people know what you're doing. But I would love to talk to you again and really get more expansive knowledge that you have that I can share. Because, what people don't realize is a child that has been sexually abused is 3 times more likely to attempt suicide as an adult than somebody who hasn't. They're more likely to abuse drugs, abuse alcohol, be overweight, end up having cancer and heart disease because they build up these other habits that cause health problems. And it's just the list goes on, and I won't try to pretend to know more than Patrick here. But the studies that I looked at were long-term studies on what this terrible damage we're doing to our kids. And we all can agree that we have a mental health crisis in America right now. And what I say to everybody listening is if we don't stop this attack on our children now, the mental health crisis we see right now is going to be child's play compared to what we see in 5, 10, 20 years when these kids start growing up.
Thanks for that.
So, Patrick, all these Hollywood celebrities like have children now that have trans. I mean, the Annette Bening, Warren Beatty, their daughter's a boy. That Charlize Theron, I guess her daughter says she's a son. Naomi Watts, the daughter is not a daughter, it's a son. And we've had, leading up to this now, surgeries under children under 18. So what do you is I think Hollywood's part of this, pushing that famous basketball player Wade. His son is now a girl. How do you see all this? It's like it's cool to have a kid that's trans. There was, I think, a TikTok the other day of a mother saying her baby was the opposite sex, which was scandalous. And then we were pushing and allowing surgeries. I mean, America's just been so crazy and so behind. Thank God Trump won, or we'd still be doing this. So how do you see all of this? And when you look at like J Lo and Ben Affleck, like their daughters now think they're boys. I mean, I'm exhausted by it. I think there's lack of parenting, but who's to blame for all of this too, Patrick?
Oh, that's a great question, Veronica. And it's really kind of simple. I was reading some statistics the other day where like if you have one person in five who identifies as trans, that the prevalence of more children becoming trans, it raises up. So the more, say you got 2 out of 5, it increases the chances of others identifying as transgender. And I thought that was really kind of a stark contrast to telling me that, this is not, biological or genetic. It is a social contagion, as everyone has been saying. And I can go through the statistics real quick. So just to give people an idea of what this is, from 0.002% to 0.005% for females, I have gender dysphoria. That is a small, small percentage of the United States population. We're talking less than possibly 15,000 females who have an actual diagnosis of gender dysphoria. 0.005 to 0.013% is for the males. That's approximately 42,000 males who have actual gender dysphoria, according to the DSM-5. And actually, it's the DSM-5 TR. And so it's just a tiny, tiny proportion. Now, we have almost 300,000 basic, I'm going to say, people who identify as transgender. 300,000 approximately identify as transgender. That's a huge block. And what it is these people do not actually have gender dysphoria. They are they're social. I'm going to call it social trans, because that's basically what it is. It's not actual gender dysphoria. It's more of a way for these people to find a commonality that they can be a part of, because a lot of kids are always looking for a place to fit in. Well, you get enough people together in these little groups, like I was saying, 1 in 5, 2 in 5, and what that does is it just kind of inflates these numbers up to where, because children are always wanting to fit in to their social groups and their peers. So that increases the probability of a child identifying as trans. And it's not actually trans, but it in the DSM-5 TR, gender dysphoria is more of an umbrella term that includes like non-binary and all the whole list of them. And it's erroneous. It's not actually a true belief of transgenderism, even though they call it that. Um, I refer to it more of a personality disorder, because that's what it seems like, and self-esteem issues, and there's a lot of mental health there. That's why mental health is failing our children in so many different ways, and we need to find ways to be able to communicate with our children. You know, it's fine that you think this right now, but maybe in a year or two, you may not feel that way anymore, because that is the fact. The desistance rate is high. And I was doing some more research where the actual detrans rate is a lot higher. It's a lot higher than what they're putting out in information. They're saying only 1 to 3% actually detransition, which is false because there's an underreporting, no reporting, and privacy issues that keep people from being vocal about being a detransitioner. What that does is it kind of skews those studies going, well, there's only 1 to 3%, but you don't factor in all this other stuff. It's kind of like, you know, for children in schools, it's 100 times more likely to be sexually assaulted in a school. So there's all these kinds of factors that play in to all of this information that's out there. And we don't, we always pick on the 1 to 3 to 5% of a lot of these studies. Um, like to give an example of that, a lot of pro. Yeah, I'm going to talk about pro-abortion for just a second, and I apologize if it offends anyone. I'm sorry. Your offense is not my problem. So you know, they focus on the 1 to 3% that is a familiar um, issue or someone they know for this 1 to 3% to validate their abortion belief, while the other 97% is done for elective reasons. And to kind of bring that together to give you an idea of the kind of things I'm talking about when there's underreporting and stuff like that. It's also like sexual assaults in the military. Unreported sexual assaults in the military is like 30,000, to give an example. So when I'm talking about these detrans rates of like 1 to 3%, it's false because it's truly skewed because they're not counting all of these other possibilities that are out there, like underreporting, no reporting,
So
privacy
Patrick,
issues.
on that note,
Yeah.
I've my neighbor's a doctor. I've had him on my show, and he's an internal med doc, and he says it's kind of go with the flow, like you were saying. Somebody in the group said, "Let me join," the party. And he used to see anorexia and bulimia, and now he sees the trans stuff because the trend has changed that direction now. And then parents aren't hardcore kicking their kids in the ass, so they're like, okay, you want to be that, go ahead, hoping they outgrow it. But then I think our society has been pushing all of these drugs to inject yourself with to become the opposite sex. So do you think that's honestly, I think that's part of it too, is our society is just so different these days, and people are missing the family unit that's hardcore, and then they're going with the flow. Because when I look at J Lo and Ben Affleck's daughters, they used to be cute girls, and there's been a lot of trauma in their life, and so now they've decided to become boys.
So what I think about that is the parent is pushing the idea that they're trans. It's already a statistical anomaly for one child. I've seen it as much as three. So to give it I don't know how much people know about statistics, but it's like 3.89 standard deviations small. So it's way out there for just one child. Now, it even becomes more astronomically improbable is two. And even worse, three children, it's a statistical almost impossibility. And yet, we have it. And one of the things that I want to say about a lot of these kinds of parents who parade their children around as being trans is um, the way I see it is they go, hey, look at me, my child is trans, pay attention to me, virtue signaling, and treating their children like they are a designer pet. That is how I really see it. And it's absolutely horrible that these people are doing that. I think it places a deep stigmatization on these children that they're going to have to live with. Hey, my mom used to treat me like a trans girl when I was a boy. I can kind of come from that from my own personal experience. My own personal experience is my mother used to dress me as a baby girl, as a boy when I was an infant, and my sister kind of saved me from that. So it's horrible that these people use this as a way to be in the in crowd with their peers in their social groups and going, "Hey, look at me, my child is trans." It's used as a social marker in a negative. Well, they use it as a positive way, but everyone else, like us, we see it in a negative manner.
It's like the left virtue signaling, right? For certain ethnic groups or things, right? It's the same kind of philosophical thought in my mind. Um, but thank you, just Patrick, for sharing the information and especially the stats. Like, is looking at something like that on a bell curve. It's almost like you couldn't even have a dot far enough to the left on that bell curve of the statistical probability of that ever happening. So thank you for your insight on that. So Veronica, I'll turn it over to you
Well,
really quick to
I just
sort of.
wanted to see if Elena had any final thoughts, and I wanted to thank her. She's everywhere, the based mother. If you're not following her on Instagram and TikTok, and especially X, you've got to follow her. Elena, any final thoughts for the group? I thank you for being such a warrior for children. And you saw, I mean, I'm passionate, and I'm standing right there with you in the trenches to get this information out.
No, just thank you for having me, guys. Two things, call me up. I'm ready to come and help spread the word, and be a voice. That's my whole existence, is letting people know what's going on. I'd love, again, for you to check out the film for free. It's at AmericanGroomerFilm.com. Use it as a tool of your own. It's there. I made it.
Faith, hope, and courage. Welcome.